Welcome back to Talking Europe. Well, it was a keenly awaited speech, and it did not disappoint its audience on optics and choreography, at least. Sporting the colours of the Ukrainian flag, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen welcomed her guest of honour, Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska, and launched into a full-hearted defence of Ukraine while also praising how the EU is expanding its support for the country. We're going to unpack this wide-ranging State of the Union address with two EU parliamentarians. I'm pleased to welcome Marie Toussaint, a French MEP from the group of the Greens and a vice president of that group, in fact. Hello and welcome to you.
Hello.
Also very pleased to welcome Nicola Beer, a German MEP and a vice president of the European Parliament from the centrist group Renew Europe. Welcome to you as well. So what were your impressions in general of this speech? Do you think it rose to the occasion? Marie Toussaint first.
Well, first I have to say that what you just underlined, the support, renewed support to Ukraine, but also a renewed support to the European project was at the core of von der Leyen's speech. And this has to be underlined and recognized as a very important speech. I would say, though, that we are at a moment, a very big time of crisis, and the EU needs to be at the level of this crisis and the challenge that we have to face. And she did insist on environmental policy, for instance, but she didn't really reach out the level of the crisis and the answers that we need, which is mostly to reduce and to share and to ensure a fair and sustainable EU.
We'll come back to those points. Just Nicola Beer, your initial reactions to this State of the Union speech.
It was a bright scope of topics, so from energy over migration up to SMEs, up to the questions of prices and inflation. It was very important to renew the support for Ukraine so that this is a fight against an aggressor. So Putin's war of aggression is not only against Ukraine, but against democracy, against us all, using the tool of energy, for example, but also using the tool of migrants against our democracies. But I think it was a sort of bright scope of new and not so new projects. And now she has to elaborate on the details, because we always hear nice words, but I am now expecting really the details and the enforcement of some of those projects, for example, in the rule of law, also for the SMEs, and also for the question of the changes of the treaty.
Let's, so you seem to sort of agree, actually, there's some things perhaps not so much substance. It sounds very good. It's the broad sweep of history and all of that. But what was missing for you then, specifically, Marie Toussaint?
Well, I have to say that she didn't address some issues. There was all ranges of issues, but she missed some. For instance, she didn't talk about agriculture, whereas we are living in a big crisis of biodiversity. People's health are suffering also from pesticides and not so good food. And we have a food crisis also going on in the world. So this is of utmost importance to address the agriculture issue, which she didn't in her first speech, at least. But also on the content. I think that this is really a time where we need to insist, as I said before, on the need to change completely our system. And there, I think, we are not yet considering that pursuing growth and always pursuing growth is also what leads us to the situation of dependency on third countries, but also on dependency on parameters that we cannot control because the Earth is a finite world, and that now the EU really needs to reduce not only energy, but energy first, of course, to reduce consumption and to change its model completely. And this was not really present in her speech, and she was even talking about new trade agreements and new pursuit of growth, which is not up to the moment.
I mean, what you were saying, I've heard that echoed some of the reactions here today, that that really she was looking at more short-term solutions to get through this winter rather than long-term sort of fundamental changes in society. On those immediate measures, I'd just like us all to take a listen to one of the most picked up parts of this State of the Union address, which is this idea of a cap on profits of energy companies. Let's take a listen to what Ursula von der Leyen had to say about that.
It is wrong to receive extraordinary record revenues and profits benefiting from war and on the back of our consumers. In these times, profits must be shared and channeled to those who need it most. And therefore, our proposal also includes the fossil fuel electricity producers who have to give a crisis contribution. And overall, our proposal will raise more than 140 billion euros for member states to cushion the blow directly.
Nicola Beer, what do you think about this idea of the 140 billion euro fund? Do you think that's going to actually happen? Are you skeptical about this? What do you think?
Now, I think we see the prices running, and this is also a problem for our societies, not only for the enterprises. We have there the risk of a social really hard problem, and so we have to work on it. But it's clear, and she mentioned it, and we will hold her responsible for that, that this is only now an emergency instrument, because we cannot, we have not a market which is reacting as it normally does. Yeah. And so we have to do it in an emergency act, but this is time limited. Yeah. And so we have a sort of cap for the prices. Yeah. It doesn't matter to the revenues or profits, but it's a cap of the prices for a short-term period. The important is that we do not only go with this instrument. We need to overlook the whole energy market. We have to complete the energy market, and we have to invest in infrastructure, in other reliable partners to import and not to be dependent only on Russia or any other state. And we have also to invest in research and development for new energy forms, like, for example, fusion energy, which is on the edge to be usable.
There was, I mean, the hydrogen bank idea also, that got a lot of attention in this speech. What did you make of that? Is that an important instrument?
Well, we don't know what it is about.
Right.
And it's the same with the 140 billion taxes that the EU might get. We don't know where it's going to go to. And if it goes to any new fossil infrastructure, for instance, this would be a real issue. And also we have vulnerable households, but also general households suffering from the prices. So the money should go to them, but it should also go to the cities, to the regions, who are also ensuring social services for the people, and they should also benefit from that. So we don't really know where it's going. And it's the same with the Convention on the Revision of the Treaty of Europe. It was nice to hear her say, yes, the EU needs to be reformed. But then where should it go? And we are proposing to have an environmental treaty that would say that the planetary has limits and that the EU should respect those planetary boundaries while respecting human and social rights. But that's not what she said. She just said we need to reform, and we don't know to where. That's one of the main issues.
Well, I think that point was interpreted as getting rid of national vetoes. No, I mean, that's what the treaty revision is about.
Yes, but she has to elaborate now on the details. And I mean, this is a problem. Okay, you only have a limited time also for such important speeches, so there is more a dropping of important words, and afterwards we all asking ourselves, okay, what she means by that. And so we will now hold her also responsible to elaborate, to present the details and to get the capitals on board, because in many of the questions, migration, for example, also the reverse of the treaties, it's the capitals which are framing.
Yeah, just to come back to what you said earlier about democracy-related questions. What did you make of this idea of this democracy pact to push back against disinformation, for example, from China? Does that have any substance, and does it contrast with the kind of lack of commitment? I think you were alluding to that, a slight lack of commitment to supporting democracy inside the EU already.
I think we have space of optimizing in that, but we have also a common ground on this. With the Digital Market Act and the Digital Service Act, we already gave the base to be able to fight disinformation, to fight fake news. But we also have to elaborate on our own tools and mechanisms. For example, for the rule of law mechanism, it was the Commission not going in the same way as the Parliament, pushing, so to hold also responsible all the member states which have problem with corruption, which have problem not to have independent judges, for example. And I think it's important that this cannot be framed in the Council, but also that this is an independent, quite like a court mechanism, so that nobody can claim it's not because of the facts, but only because of no political adherence on that.
Yeah, just some final thoughts on that topic from you.
No, but defending democracy is about fighting against disinformation. It's also about fighting the concentration of the media. But what we see right now is a real concentration in almost all countries of TV channels and magazines, and also edition of books now. And this also needs to be fought against, for instance, the idea of dismantling the GAFAM. And this also wasn't one of the proposals. So
The
yes,
GAFA.
we need to go further than the DSA and DMA.
The GAFA, did you say?
Yeah.
Google, Apple, Facebook, and right. Okay. So a lot of broad ideas, but you're both waiting for a lot of details, I think, on what actually happens next. That's all we have time for on this edition of Talking Europe. I'd like to thank Marie Toussaint and Nicolas Baer. Do stay with us, and we'll be back very soon for another edition of Talking Europe.